Good morning. Welcome to Morning Moments. I am so glad that you took the time to join us today. Whatever platform you're looking at this, Facebook or Abundant TV or YouTube or recording, wherever you're seeing it, I'm glad that you joined us today. Today, I have a screenplay writer, Jaclyn Whitt, that's with us. And thank you and welcome to Morning Moments.
Thank you. Hi. Good morning,
Jack,
everyone.
and Jaclyn, where are you at? Where are you located?
Actually, I'm in Canada at the moment. I'm on the West Coast near Vancouver.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I really feel that God's calling me to Atlanta. So hopefully you'll see me there.
Well, good. That's that's the big movie area. It's the Hollywood of the South, or they say. And so, yeah, God's really moving there in the Atlanta area. So, yes, we'll be praying for you about that. So, tell me about yourself. We've got to know you a little bit. Just talking before we started this interview. What do you do, and why do you do it?
Well, I have gotten into writing screenplays, and I've had my first one optioned, so I'm really excited because that means everything's moving forward now. But it's crazy because I used to think that there was nothing left of my life. Like I ended up moving out very young, and I got into a relationship, had children, got married. It was really not a healthy marriage, and I was basically on the edge of committing suicide. Really, I was depressed for years. I tried medication; it did nothing for me. I think really what it was I really missed God. I grew up in the church. I grew up knowing God, but I really think my relationship was through my parents. You know how at some point you have to establish that relationship directly with God. And I hadn't done that, but I always had a reverence for God and, an admiration, and I could see his handiwork. I never doubted in his existence, but I very much doubted that he cared about my existence. And in the marriage that I was in, there was a lot of things like that were said. So it just kept confirming my own insecurities. Like, you're useless, you're not good as a mother or wife, and the world would be better off without you. All of these horrible things, were said to me, and they weighed very heavy on me. And I got to a point where that's all I could hear in my own brain. And so in the moment where I had made up my mind I was going to commit suicide, I had this, I won't say what it said because it might be considered controversial, but I had a voice that spoke to my heart that gave me wisdom in the moment where I realized maybe there is hope. It was a very small sliver, but it was enough. And I was reaching for it. And my response to that was to give my life to God. And I was so lost at the time, I didn't even know who to pray to. So I just prayed to the one who created me, because I knew that whoever created me was the one that I was, I guess, that I needed to be loyal to. That's who I owed my life to, right? And so I said, I'm done with me. I've made a mess of my life. Whatever's left of it, it's yours. Show me what to do and I'll do it. I'm done with me. Show me you have something better. And it was as simple as that. And some people, when they have their stories about giving their life to God, they have this moment where there's this lifting off of them. And I did not have that. All I had was the determination to see what God would do with what I just gave him. What does this mean? And so from there on, I just always had this expectation: if God is real, and if he loves us, and if he loves me, he's going to show me what to do. And he's going to do something different than I would. So I was prepared whenever I had a decision to make or a situation that I had to approach or whatever. And I'd pray, so what do I do with this? And I almost always knew it was him when he would give me an answer that was different than what I would have done. And of course, took me out of my comfort zone. But I was kind of in experiment mode where I was like, well, what happens if I actually obey? So I did it. And over the course of probably, it was about a year, maybe a bit more, of just constantly obeying, more so out of experiment than out of, trust and faith. But really showed me that he cared about me, and my life really was turning around. Things were changing drastically in such a good way that I ended up falling in love with him. So then I gave him my heart, and not just my life, not just my obedience, but actually my heart, where I couldn't even imagine life without God, and I was talking to him constantly, doing the dishes and I'm talking with God, like driving down the road, I'm talking with God, like you name it. The relationship was very strong. And I felt like God wanted to take me somewhere in my life. I thought it was music, because I grew up doing music, and it seemed that was, the biggest talent or whatever that I had. But as that door seemed to be closing, because I was realizing that the lifestyle that it demanded was not what I was being called to, then through a few different circumstances, it really brought forward like the writing and screenwriting specifically, because I love creating those pictures and the scenes and people interacting, all the dynamic. And so now that's what I've been pursuing, and that's where God is taking me. And so, yeah, I told him, show me you can do something better. And he's like, okay, let's do it.
There's a few things that you said that I'd just like to ask you about or make comments
Mm,
about. It's there's so many people who have started out and maybe had experience as a child the goodness of God, but then not realize that it's a walk for themselves that they have to do. We start walking in the shadows or the footsteps of other people, maybe our parents. One thing as a preacher's kid I had to learn myself is that God doesn't have any grandchildren.
yep.
They're all
Good
children.
point.
And either
Yeah.
you're a child of God or you're not. There's no grandchildren. You're not grandfathered into heaven because of what your parents have done. But sometimes our walk with God and our walk with faith is based on what I've seen them, until you experience and say, now, God, I am trusting in you and
Mhm.
I am believing in you. Then that experience that you had back then is is illuminated into your adult life,
Yeah.
and even with the mistakes you made. Some of you are wondering, well, God, I've made mistakes, but I knew you as a child. What do I do now? David felt that way when he said, restore unto me the joy of my salvation.
Mhm.
Renew into me that spirit that you had. I long for that relationship with you, God, that I had as a child.
Yeah.
And sometimes our adult experiences brings that back to us and say, God, I really didn't surrender my life completely to you. I've made a step, but I haven't surrendered. Paul tells us we need to die daily.
Mhm.
And
And I
so,
feel like I did die that day. Like
yes,
that part of me that was so determined to do my life my way, that died.
yeah, yeah. There's a group, you speak of songs, that there's a group years and years ago, it's the words of the song that says, in my house, there's been a mercy killing. The man I used to be has finally died, and he talks about going down to the river and being baptized in. But yes, that was the day that I died to myself. And when you die to self, then the reality of God's purpose, plan, and hope for you comes out.
Mhm.
I never expected to be myself to be a screenplay writer, as you said. But you know what? When you die to self, God says, now that I've got your attention, here's what I want you to do.
Mhm.
And we could then say to God, and you wouldn't be the first person to argue with God. I've done it a few times, but God, I don't know how to do it. I told you to do it. I didn't tell you how yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because he calls us. He doesn't always call the
No.
equipment. He does equip who he calls.
But he gave me a lot of time to prepare. Like
Yes.
honestly, I started my first script that I was working on was when I was in grade 6, so I was 11. And then, but it was just a hobby. Like I said, I wasn't thinking I was going to pursue it. But when I was ready to pursue it, I still was raising kids.
Right.
And so God connected me with a great mentor who helped me to develop my skill. But of course, it was, stop and go kind of thing because I'm raising a family. And so he honored the fact that I really wanted to raise my family separate from having a career, because I just pour my whole self into whatever I'm doing. And so he allowed me to prepare while I was still living out my calling as a parent. Now my children are grown and I'm ready to just throw myself into the career side of
God
it.
does understand the seasons in our life too, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And there are times that our seasons in our life it's going to be coming. God's got a plan for you to fulfill that. But for right now, this is what you need. Sometimes it's concentrating on raising your children, and sometimes it's maybe going to school or whatever. But if you want to know what your purpose is, if you don't know what your purpose is, find out what your passion is, because often your passion is wrapped up in your purpose.
Yeah.
And often he brings an opportunity once things fall into place for that to happen, like you have. uh, Jaclyn, you have a great testimony, and we were talking about what you need to share, and she goes, I know what it is. And so when I saw her eyes light up when she was sharing that, I'm thinking that's exactly what somebody needed to hear today.
Mhm.
Some of you are listening to this, and it could be from Facebook, it could be in YouTube, it could be on TV or other places, and you're going, I need to pass this message on to somebody else. And yes, you do. If there's somebody that you need to hear this interview. Maybe it's you yourself that need to hear it, to know that God's not done with you yet.
Yeah.
He's got a purpose, a plan, and a future, and a hope for you as well. So it's time for us to listen to God. God knows your heart. It's up to us to hear his voice. Say, God, I need to hear from you. Now, down below, I'm going to put the connections and links and things like that all the accomplishments she's gotten. And you could also see what God's going to do for Jaclyn Whitt in the future as well. But as we end this interview, I want you to take the time when this interview is over and pray for her. Pray for Jaclyn, that she would continue to be in the palm of God's hand, in the place where God has her, and to be able to minister not only to her children and her family as she has, but now into the screenwriting that God's opened doors up for her. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Jaclyn, for sharing this morning with us.
Thank you.
Is there any closing comments you'd like to make to folks?
One last thing, if my testimony did touch you, especially if it's in a way where you're feeling like, yes, I'm in that place of depression, and those thoughts are consuming my head all the time. My thoughts, all I can think about are these negative thoughts. I just want to let you know that even though in that moment I didn't feel like this lift or whatever, when I looked back, I realized I never again had one of those thoughts ever come in my mind where I thought you'd be better off dead, or you're not good enough, or useless, whatever it was. Like all of those things, seriously, never once. Suicide never crossed my mind, even one time after that. I was delivered from those oppressive thoughts, and I didn't know it in the morning, or in the moment, I mean. So if you are trusting God to deliver you from something, you may only be able to see it when you look back, but he is so faithful.
Our God of hope is the God of hopelessness. And if you're hopeless, God of hope could be with you. Absolutely. Thank you so much. I appreciate what you shared. Please pass this on, and keep coming back. Thank you so much, and keep coming back for some more morning moments, and God bless you.